Mendocino Council of Governments order. Would you like to call the roll?
Yeah. So doing roll call. Director Jurdy,
Here.
Stransky,
Yes.
Wasserman,
Here.
Cipollino,
Here.
Krosky, alternate Carter,
Here.
and Jim Brown.
Here.
Oh, and Rex Jackman.
Here.
Okay, so we've convened as the Mendocino Council of Governments and reconvened as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency with Caltrans. And we've had a tour this morning of both some projects in Willits and Laytonville. We'll discuss those in a minute, but the next thing on our agenda is public expression on non-agenda items. Do we have any comments on non-agenda items? You can also comment when we get to agenda items.
So the routes to school, safe routes to school, is that
That's an
considered
agenda.
one of the
That's the
agenda
next thing on our
items?
agenda.
I will wait till then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we'll go to that discussion of the Willits and Laytonville area tour, transportation plans and projects that are either underway or have been funded. Maybe we've convened as a board while we were taking that tour, but are there any just sort of highlights people wanted to focus in on? I mean, I was impressed by the number of charging stations both in Willits and Laytonville that are coming in, and the fact that the Laytonville charging stations, I wasn't aware there were going to be fast charging stations. And then the pedestrian improvements, especially the bridge by the school. Georgianne, I know you've been looking at that project for some time.
Yeah, I was very impressed by it. I mean, I think it's been long coming and has taken, like we discussed, certainly a lot more money than we had anticipated, but I was very impressed by it. I mean, I think eventually we'll have to upgrade the regular bridge, and I think we're well positioned now that when that bridge gets upgraded, that we're already well above the floodplain and ready for it.
Want to talk about the
Sure, I'm Joni Potter, and I'm the superintendent of Laytonville Schools. And I'm here really to just advocate to continue the work from the previous Safe Routes to School plan that added the sidewalks in the areas around the elementary school, and then sidewalks getting us to Healthy Start. We have students and traffic there, all day long, basically. And then also to advocate for more signage along Branscombe Road, especially going west. The area you probably saw when you walked today, that we have the old gym, which we call affectionately the Tin Gym, which is also a community project or property, and used for community events too. So there's no signage. There's one sign, just before you get to this road here. And then there are no other signs noting that it's a school zone and slow for children or whatever the myriad of signs that denote that. And we often have a lot of traffic for Laytonville, but we do. A lot of cars coming and going from the Tin Gym, and it really isn't marked appropriately, showing that there are children and that there should be slow traffic there. And then if you go along, continue west at the high schools too, there isn't really any signage right there that's, denoting it's a slow zone. There's a 25-mile-per-hour zone on the eastbound side of Branscombe Road there. But other than that, there's not really much signage. So I just really wanted to advocate for that. Again, I've spoken a couple times to both of these points. So I appreciate your work and help toward continuing the work that we started and getting sidewalks and safer walking areas for our students. And me, I walk everywhere.
Any other comments about what we're seeing in Laytonville?
I can comment. I'm Jameis Spence. I'm the coordinator of Laytonville Healthy Start Family Resource Center, and we have a Safe Routes to School grant through MCOG in the county. For over the past couple of years, we've worked collaboratively with the school district, just getting students and parents to walk and bike more. And so that's been our piece. My husband Roland works with students and teaches them how to ride bikes and use proper hand signals and just being comfortable in the road. Since Laytonville is very walkable, we would like to get the children out more. And Our facility is at the end of Harwood Road. We passed it when we were on the bus tour. And currently there are no sidewalks between the school and our facility.
And we have school programs
And as
down
Joni
there.
mentioned, we do a lot of school programs, back and forth between our after-school program and during school. The students come down to Harwood Park and Healthy Start. So if there's ever a way that we can be involved in getting some funding for sidewalks into our zone, we would appreciate it. So thank you.
And then earlier this morning, we took a tour of Willits. Any thoughts on that? What we saw there?
Yeah, I would like everybody, thank you very much for coming to our town and looking at our new street and curbs and gutter and sidewalks. And thank you very much to Caltrans and to Granite Construction for doing the work that they've done. The real crux of the thing is going to be this week when they do the striping and have 2 bike lanes that run the full length of our street. And that's going to cut out on some of the things that people are used to. The one thing that I will have to say is that people that are driving through Willits without the walk lanes, the white lines that go across the road at the intersection, they do not stop for you. And that's something that took us all by surprise, is that people that have lived in the community for years still thought that those went away. So they just, when you were out in the middle of the street, and behind you, and there was no place for them, they thought you were jaywalking. And so that's something that anybody that is doing this again needs to take into consideration. Caltrans is to let people know that the crosswalks are still there. And that's one thing that we have all noticed. Thank you, but thank you for coming.
And I'll just add on, I also really appreciate all the work by City of Willits and Caltrans on the area that we looked at on Highway 20 and Blosser Lane. I'm really excited. I realize we're a few years away from, better sidewalks there and a better crossing across Highway 20, but just the awareness that we need to do something with that Blosser Lane, Highway 20 intersection is good. I mean, to have all of us there and just see the danger that's there. I think it's easy to hear that an intersection is dangerous, but I think for everyone to take the time to go out and really just stand there and see, if you had to cross it as yourself, it'd be a little bit terrifying. If you had a kid in tow, it's a lot worse. And that is something that, there's a lot more traffic when school is, either starting or stopping. So yeah, same as Larry, just thanks for coming, and I really appreciate all the work by City of Willits and Caltrans and our DOT as well.
I could add, just briefly commenting on Larry's comment about people not respecting pedestrians with the absence of the marked crosswalks. As I understand it, pedestrians have just as much of a legal right to cross at any intersection, whether the crosswalk is painted there or not. But it is, I think, interesting to note the difference in behavior between a painted crosswalk and the absence of one. So everybody needs to, I guess, be extra careful.
I just want to add that you look in the vehicle code, which you all do. It does talk about marked crosswalks and unmarked crosswalks, and what you just heard is true. Obviously the marked ones are more visible, but you try to mark the ones that are most likely to be used, or most likely the ones that need to be emphasized. But at every corner, every intersection, legally is a crosswalk, and drivers are supposed to yield to any pedestrians that approach them. So that's in the vehicle code. It makes no distinction whether you're in a marked crosswalk or an unmarked crosswalk is one that's not there. The police can cite a vehicle who does not stop for a pedestrian at either one of those locations. But the vehicle code, it talks about unmarked crosswalks. That means just about every place there's an intersection or a junction.
Okay, well, thanks. And I like always having these offsite meetings, and we try to have 2 a year. This year, I think we only had the 1 offsite, but it worked out, and we were able to cover 2 significant communities in one meeting, so that was good. Okay, so if there are no more public comments on today's tour, we'll go on to other items on the agenda. Okay, thanks. So the next item is our award of the Triennial performance audits for both MCOG and MTA. It's a multi-year contract.
Janet, I think, was actually going to talk about this item.
I'll take that one. Yes, this is something that the Triennial performance audit is something we have to do under the Transportation Development Act, TDA. That's something we're subject to and that we administer. So this is the year when, the fiscal year when we'll get our audit done. I did issue a request for qualifications. I got 2 proposals back, as you see in my staff report. I need to give my apologies. We haven't been able to convene the committee. We haven't had enough time for our staff reviewers to evaluate those proposals and come back with a recommendation yet. We like to have MCOG staff and Mendocino Transit Authority staff do the evaluation. The TDA says that we are to consult MTA in the choice of an auditor. So that's typically what we do, and we just haven't had enough time with everything else that's going on, and so I'd like to continue this item to the next meeting. We believe we still have enough time in the scope of work schedule to get that done in a timely manner. Probably the work wouldn't start until January in any case, so. In December, once we approve a contract award here at the board, then we would be able to go ahead and get a contract and perhaps get a little head start, but with the holidays, realistically, probably start in January. So I think we can still be, there's enough wiggle room in there in that schedule to still catch up every time.
So without objection, we'll just continue the item in December meeting.
Thank you.
Then we'll go to the consent calendar, which is approval of the August 20th minutes and the approval of the second amendment of the fiscal year overall work program and acceptance of the 16-17 fiscal audit for Mendocino Transit Authority.
And that audit's in your packet. And Loretta's got her staff report about the OWP and answer questions, and it's.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's on consent. Do you want to pull it off consent?
Well, if anybody has any questions, we don't have to pull off consent for a question. So if anybody has a question about the overall work program amendment. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I will second.
Any comment on the motion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, we probably need a roll call for the funding aspect in the work program. If Marta could just quickly call the roll on that.
Director Jurdy?
Yes.
Stransky? Director Stransky?
Yep.
Consent calendar, we had to call it
Consent
again.
calendar approval?
Yes.
Okay. Wasserman?
Yes.
Chimolino?
Yes.
Krosky?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
And Jackman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Then we're, do we have a motion? We're gonna recess as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency and reconvene as the Mendocino Council Government. Says there a motion to ratify the actions of the Regional Transportation Planning Agency?
I will so move.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
So basically, this part of the meeting, Caltrans does it.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
We've got 2 boards in one. Okay, so then we're on to reports. Mendocino Transit Authority, is there an update? North Coast Rail Authority, is there an update from?
Yes, I did attend the last NCRA meeting, and there was an interesting discussion. The Senator McGuire's staff was present and informed the NCRA board that they should be spending most of their time now on trails rather than rail with the new bill that's been signed. And the board did not really agree with that perspective. So there was some discussion around questions about the legislation that the governor ultimately signed. And we did put the Senate Bill 1029 in your information packet, so you have that. But I just wanted to note it that this is a bill that the MCOG board had sent a letter of support. The final bill that was signed and approved by the governor, it's quite different from the original bill that MCOG discussed several times. So you have the final bill in your packet. I guess just to kind of summarize is that, in my view, it really gutted that first bill. It took a lot of the big issues out of it. So what ended up was basically a bill that is going to conduct an assessment of the NCRA and determine the most appropriate way to dissolve it and the most appropriate way to dispense with its assets and liability, and result in a report to the legislature before July 1 of 2020. So that's far different than creating the new trail agency and the lofty goals in the first bill. So that's just for your information, and that's in your information packet. So I will continue to monitor the NCRA issues and report to you.
Thanks, Loretta. We do have the MCOG staff summary of meetings. Is there any meetings there you want to highlight?
I don't think there's anything that we need to highlight there. Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Then, do you want to discuss a little bit the Coblo State Route 162 multipurpose trail?
Yes. So since we're up here in the north part of the county, the other major community up here, of course, is Coblo, and although we're not in Coblo, it seems like an important time to provide an update on what's going on with the MCOG project that's up there. For those of you that don't know, we are administering an active transportation program grant to construct a multi-use trail parallel to Highway 162. This is something that's been going on for a while, and in light of the recent fatality up there just a couple weeks ago, we wanted to give an update of the progress that's being made on that project. I know sometimes for those of us, for the people that are outside of transportation, because things tend to take so long, I think there's a feeling that sometimes things just have stopped. They're not happening, but we want to ensure people that we are still progressing on the project. It's still happening, and we're aware of the fatality. We've been in touch with Caltrans about it and are making progress. And James is going to give an update on where we are with project development.
So the last time I spoke to you guys was on the 4th of December, where you guys adopted the mitigated negative declaration, so the CEQA document. From that point, we were allowed to allocate money for design and right-of-way, so we did that in January. On the 2nd of January, as some of you are already aware, one of the property owners filed a petition to challenge the validity of the document. It doesn't do anything to the document itself other than delay the process, unless a judge were to say, hey, you guys have to go do something else. We have yet to set foot in court, and we've been actively pursuing a hopefully positive solution here with the property owner. Early discussions sort of dealt with hiring a third-party hydrologist to assess her property and see how the trail would affect it. That was one of the issues that she had with the environmental document. That's been done. The hydrologist has given her recommendations, which we have forwarded on to the property owner, and we're waiting to hear back from them as to whether that is something that is amenable to them or not. And then, concurrently, while we wait for the property owner to get back to us about that, we're still designing the rest of the trail. We're designing the wetland mitigations up on the very north parcel owned by the church. And then possibly still looking at some tribal property for mitigation as well, although it seems like the north parcel is more suitable for that. However, they didn't feel like they had quite enough rain data from last year, so they're hoping to get some more rain this winter. We'll see. It's not looking very cloudy at the moment. We have a RFP for right-of-way appraisal and acquisition services, because that's going to be the next step once we have a little bit better design. That should be going out in the next week or so. As Nafili said, somebody else lost their life up there about the end of the first week of October, hit by a drunk driver. So that just sort of reaffirms the need for this project. And depending on how things go with the property owner and how that gets delayed, we're still on track for construction in 2020, 2021, depending on when things get allocated and awarded. Any questions? Cool.
If I can comment on this project. I put the application together a few years ago under one of the state's programs. If I recall correctly, the way you get points for projects and make them priorities so you can be competitive is one of the things they look at is what is the accident rate or the fatality rate per the statewide average for similar facilities. And I think that I believe we came up with 22 times the statewide average. 22 times the statewide average for fatalities on along similar type facilities. Similar rural highways with similar conditions. And I believe Caltrans would tell you that when you look at accident rates on facilities, you see something that's 3 times the statewide average, you get concerned. When you see something 5 times, I never saw anything around here that was 5 times the statewide average. That one was 22 times the statewide average. And here we lost somebody else. And we're involved in a lawsuit, yeah. But I think that we'll come to terms with them. I'm not gonna be around, but if we have to put more money into it, I can't think of a better place for our investment in dollars in that particular project. It has to be done. There isn't any other alternative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real problem, and the recent fatality was within the limits of the proposed project. So it will be a huge safety improvement for people in Covelo.
Can you remind me again the start and finish points of it?
It's going to start right there at East Lane on the west side. Caltrans theoretically is going to do a little bit of striping work just south of that to get to Howard, but the actual trail itself will start at East Lane, the west side of the road right there at East Lane, go all the way up to Hurt, and then also on the south end of the tribal property where the gas station is, it's going to go west, and connect to Henderson to provide access to the schools and the community over there.
Okay, thanks for the update. So next we have the Transit Productivity Social Services Advisory Council issues.
Yes, I think Janet is going to talk about this also. We've been, over the last few months, we've been talking, several items have come up, and so we're just going to review the issues that the TPC and SSTAC will be handling in the upcoming months.
Okay, I'll speak to that one. So we'll talk a little bit about public transit services. We have our two committees that we work with. The Transit Productivity Committee has 2 MCOG board members and 2 MTA members and a senior center representative. And they get together once or twice a year, have several duties. The Social Services Transportation Advisory Council is made of prescribed membership of, according to state law, to have these councils. And it's our social service agencies and actual transit users and people like that. So we have a good active group there. Starting at the top, I just wanted to mention several issues that we're sort of tracking through that we've been watching, and I think we want to try to come back in January, February, have an extra meeting and catch up on some of these items. There's an annual performance review of Mendocino Transit Authority, and we take a look at how well the routes are performing, and we look at a lot of data, and we have certain standards we apply to that. And that's running about a year behind. MTA has been working with overhauling their systems and their software and things, and it's been hard to put together those numbers. So we did, last time we looked at it, last May, I think it was, we got up through February 2017. So we're about a year behind. We want to catch up on that. And we got another one coming in the spring. So that's the performance review. Fare box revenue. This isn't something that comes up very often, but there was a new state law, Senate Bill 508, did some amendments to the Transportation Development Act. One of the things that went into effect July 2016, one of the things it did was to bring the required fare box revenue standard down to 10% for rural areas. So that means that, you know, these services are mostly subsidized, but the transit operator has to bring in some revenue from fares. So MTA's was grandfathered in at 14.7. That's pretty high. They've been able to meet it most of the time. And so MCOG has its own set of standards. They're kind of based on these kinds of things. And so we've had that at 15%. So it's way higher than the state standard. So we're talking about what was the recommendation out of the committee last May, that MCOG consider reducing its fare box standard to 10% over the next few years, revisit this issue this time next year. That would be in the spring when we have another year or two of performance data in. So we're going to look and see how they're doing and come back to you with a committee recommendation on doing that. The senior centers funding is something we haven't addressed in a very long time, and they get funds from MCOG through the local transportation funds, and it goes to MTA for the senior centers, and the MTA then has a contract with each of the senior centers. So MCOG funds it. MTA's in charge of handling this contract. So there's been a funding formula they've used for many, many years, and it seems to have kind of gotten out of kilter over time. You know, over time, some centers are offering more transportation services than they were, and some are offering less. So it doesn't quite fit anymore. And this is something that came up in the past 2 independent performance audits. So everybody's kind of agreeing it's time to address this. There's no prescribed way to tackle that. But it was recommended for both MTA and MCOG. So we're going to have to talk to each other and work out a more up-to-date formula in consultation with the senior centers. So just to make sure that the funding they get is applied in the best way. And the last thing on my list here is the unmet transit needs. That's a process we do every year to identify needs. And our social services group there is going to look at that every November. They meet and have a workshop. It's kind of informal brainstorming to bring up all of the needs anyone can think of that's come from their constituencies. And we just make a list. And in December, we have a public hearing and make that goes into our budget process, and then by the time we adopt our budget next spring, our committees have recommended on needs that are reasonable to meet. So it kind of gets boiled down, things rise to the top. Am I mixing metaphors? I think so. But in any case, narrowing that down so that we can find out what could actually be funded, or we can find a way to make adjustments to accommodate certain needs, or find grants, other partnerships, things like that. So why did I bring this up now? Oh, I know why. We have Jacob, our driver here, is can vouch for this. Their MTA has a committee of their drivers that are looking at all the routes on their system, and that was part of the recommendation last year, was to see what comes out of that. So the last year's recommendation found 7 needs reasonable, but they were contingent on some things happening. So this is what we want to track through and follow up with. So those 7 needs were contingent on review of existing routes, which is what the MTA Committee of Drivers is working on. Update of the funding formula for senior centers transportation contracts, I just mentioned that. And potential new revenues from the Federal Transit Administration Section 5311 program. That's one of the major programs. They've thrown a lot of things into that program that can fund transit. So those are grants and things like that. So those are all the things we're trying to follow through and see how did those 7 needs come out? Are they still reasonable or fundable? So we want to take a look at that, hopefully in January. And at the same time, we're going to start our whole new cycle in November, looking at needs again. So that's all I have. Are there any questions on that? And I spent a little extra time on that for the benefit of those who, aren't always here with us and can hear a little more about that.
Right.
Thank
you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Do you have any miscellaneous reports?
I don't have anything.
Okay, then we'll go to MCOG planning staff.
Just a couple of reports. The one that's listed, the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation and Adaptation Planning Grant. Those applications are due November 30th, and MCOG plans to submit one under each category, one under the Sustainable Transportation Planning category. That's Senate Bill 743. We're calling it VMT, Vehicle Miles Traveled. It's going to be this is a grant that the TAC supports. The purpose is to, well, let me back up. So SB 743, which was adopted in 2013, requires changes in the CEQA process. Local agencies are going to have to change the way they evaluate the transportation aspects in CEQA, transportation impacts. And instead of using what's currently being used as level of service, it's going to change to require that it be based on vehicle miles traveled. So this grant will be for the purposes of establishing base thresholds for local agencies and establishing methodologies and mitigation measures, and basically coming up with the tools that will help local agencies comply with the new requirements. So we're working on that grant application, and it's due November 30th. And then the second grant, and Nephili might want to also talk about this, will be under the adaptation program. We've met with county staff, we've met with the county CEO, and separately we met with Supervisor Krosky, and this is to investigate an adaptation grant for fire evacuation, preparedness, vulnerability. We're still writing the scope and developing it. And you want to talk about it?
I can, sure.
Yeah.
So the idea that we at MCOG and county are exploring is something that would include a vulnerability assessment to look at, use some climate models to identify areas of the county that are that would focus on fire, most prone to wildfire, and then areas that are at risk that have limited ingress and egress that could be impacted in times of emergency. Also consider where there are sensitive populations that might need assistance in evacuation, such as elderly population or lower income that may not have immediate access to vehicles for evacuations. We would propose bringing MTA and larger school districts in on the project to plan for potential evacuations, and then come up with some recommendations for maybe alternate evacuation routes for an alternate for those transportation facilities that are most vulnerable in those times of emergencies. So we've been working with the county admin. They had initially thought that they would be the applicant on the project, but because they have a feeling that we have more familiarity with these Caltrans grants, that the grant would have a better chance of being successful if MCOG took on applying for the grant and administering the grant, but then they would play a major role if the grant were successful. They would play a major role in the project in terms of getting all the key stakeholders involved in the project, like Office of Emergency Services, fire agencies, the sheriff, all of those, because we feel that without major involvement from all of those stakeholders, it's going to be a meaningless project. So we're working on that, and we'll be working closely with county administration on that. And then if the project is successful, I imagine we'll be working with all of our local agencies as well.
And so both of these grants require a local match of 11.47%. So we propose to put the required match in the planning work program, which would ultimately be approved by the MCOG board in our next budget cycle. And we've asked the county also if they have any matching funds that they can contribute. So we don't know about that, but we will be having to provide a match for the grant. We think that we would be very competitive in the adaptation grant because of our fires over the last few years and record fires in the state. So we're hopeful about that. There is only $6 million available statewide, and it is the last round of those grants, so there's not a lot of money, but we are optimistic about that. And any questions about that? Okay.
Well, I would just add that Supervisor Krosky and I brought this back to the full Board of Supervisors, and they did endorse the idea of the county working on this grant program. And I think we all, every time there's a fire somewhere in the county, we get calls and comments on social media like, what's the county gonna do about my neighborhood? And there's a neighborhood south of Fort Bragg Simpson Lane area where there is a route identified, and the fire department has the key to get through the lock gate going through private property. But then the latest thing on social media was, but did you know, of course nobody commented at me like 6 months ago, but did you know that that the property owners put piles of dirt on that road? So even though they have the key, so I'm just pointing this out because maybe I just want to make sure that the grant application is broad enough so that there's some sort of thought process about monitoring these escape routes if they're only escape routes and not year-round public access roads. Because I suspect that in a number of areas of the county, that's probably all we're going to be able to achieve is access through someone's property in the case of emergency.
Yeah, I imagine that is probably the case. And at the same board meeting, the next item was the evacuation routes and brook trails, and I think it's a similar issue where it's through private properties that they can be used for those emergencies, but making sure that they are in a state that they can be used in times of emergency evacuation,
And that they don't get abused by the
right.
public and used when they're not supposed to be used. I mean, I think you can quickly wear out your welcome if we don't, make sure people are staying off of those routes when they're not
Right.
in an emergency status.
So So those will be, this is something we would propose, hiring a consultant to do this project. And so those are all details that could be included in that project.
Okay, thanks. So is there any miscellaneous?
I have a couple. We recently, in October, issued the call for projects to our TAC for the annual MCOG planning projects, transportation planning projects. So those applications will be due December 1. We start early in the year, just getting our draft work program ready for next fiscal year. And so along with whatever applications are received from local agencies, it will be the routine MCOG elements plus these 2 grant matches, I assume. So that's that. And then the only other report I have is to let you know that at the December meeting, we will be scheduling a presentation from the consultant team that's been conducting our multi-year ATP non-infrastructure safe routes to school project, the one that Jama mentioned. It involves 7 school districts or more countywide, and it's been a project that we've been reporting to you over the last 3 or more years. So that will be wrapping up around the end of the year, and we will have a presentation. I'm sure that'll be a busy board meeting with other items, but that presentation will be on that agenda. That's all I have.
Okay. So next thing, board members, I thought it'd be good just to kind of go over a little bit about the SB1 funding that's coming into Mendocino County, because it's really kind of remarkably a large figure that's coming into the county for all of our jurisdictions and to the Mendocino Council of Governments and to Caltrans. It's spending money here, so I thought we should kind of go over some of that. So I thought I'd ask the director, McFeely, to kind of go over. So the STIP funds, which is the single biggest source of funds that comes into MCOG, it's gone up quite a bit just from the early beginnings of the money coming into SB1. And so what's that looking like right now?
Right, so, well, to really appreciate how much is coming in now, you have to go back to the previous STIP cycle when we were deleting projects. And in this past STIP cycle, we had about $7.5 million. So that's something that a STIP cycle happens every 2 years. And we have a 5-year period that we can spread this money out. But then we get another pot of money 2 years later. But so in this past STIP cycle, the 2018 STIP, we had about $7.5 million. And as you mentioned, that's just as the revenue sources, because several of the revenue sources from SB1, they takes a few years before they are all drawing revenue. So we anticipate that will continue to increase as those revenues build.
So instead of 0 going into this dip, it's now $7.5 million.
Yeah, so $7.5 million, and that happens about every 2 years. And that goes to a variety of projects around the county. But for instance, the improvements, county's got a improvement project on North State Street programmed in this current STIP cycle, and Fort Bragg has a South Main Street bicycle and pedestrian project program. So just as a couple examples of what that money will pay for.
And then a lot of the money that we see Caltrans often spend do around the county is through their shops, the State Highway Safety Program.
Yes, so the shop funds safety projects and maintenance projects. The project that Richard was talking about earlier at Blosser Lane and Highway 20, that would be a maintenance type project. So there's actually a really large amount of money that comes into the county, although it's not local agencies. It is projects being done in the county, often by local people, so it's local jobs. So in the 2018 SHOP, which is a 4-year program, about a third of the money in that 4-year program comes from SB1. And in Mendocino County, the projects that are programmed, that are planned for that period, according to the shop, it's about $451 million in projects that'll be happening in Mendocino County. And that, that ranges from, overlays to guardrails to I think some bridge rehabilitation. It's a wide range of projects that'll be happening. So it's a big chunk of money.
Well, I know that just where I'm driving, I'm seeing Caltrans projects everywhere. Or in some cases, it might be subcontractors, but they're just resurfacing Highway 1, Highway 20, everywhere I'm going.
Right. And Richard, where's Richard?
Yeah, where is it?
He's hiding from them. He actually had some additional information on the 10-year shop plan.
Yeah, and I don't have figures. Everybody has a hard time with the signal here, but I was trying to dial this thing out. I said it's just grinding away. But what I will say is, you were mentioning the 4-year shop cycle. Now we have a 10-year shop plan, which goes out 10 years for our projects, and there's a document that I'll be able to send a link to whoever needs it, and it shows per county what is projected to be spent in there over the next 10 years. Now that dollar figure that's there has projections for what SB1 would generate funds, so we are planning for that. Also in that same document, there's a page in there that shows the projects that are prioritized for SB1 funding. They're prioritized based on 4 main, we call them assets, like pavement, bridges, culverts, and then there's TMS, transportation management systems. So they're all listed in there, so you can see which projects are targeted and where. It's a very helpful document. Now, that's all predicated on tomorrow, those numbers. So if Prop 6, which is in there to repeal those dollar figures, then that dollar figure, depending on the county, but a good figure is about a third, in some cases a half, that would just drop. The dollar figures would be reduced. So I'll send a link, and whoever I could send it to, that they could look at that. It's called a 10-year shop plan, and you can look in there and see the different projects that are in your area. And it's important to look at those. And I'm going to be going around to Nephelia and Lisa to share those documents so we can see what projects are coming on the local side. And I work with Rex too, but sometimes things come late. I know these grant projects, they seem to, you got a few weeks to get these things in, it seems like, and then we may miss it. And it's nice to know if there was a SHOP, which is State Highway Operation Protection Program, project that might have been in the area that might possibly be able to absorb that into the project too, so there's working together. And with this increase in projects that could be happening even more, it's going to be that much more important to coordinate our efforts, because once you get all this work, everybody may be happy, but then there's also what the public is not happy about, and that's delays. They want to know how long it's going to take from point A to point B, so the better we communicate with the local projects and the state projects, the better. So.
And then also a lot of the types of features that are identified in those, we mentioned those community-based planning grants are now, the new name is adaptation planning / sustainable planning grants. These are all grant programs that we've had for about 20 years now that allow local communities to identify improvements that they would like to see, usually focused on non-motorized, non-traditional, the types of improvements that Caltrans hasn't historically been focused on funding. Oftentimes, those SHOP projects are one of the only ways that we can fund, if not the entire suite of requested improvements. We can fund certain components by including them in those SHOP projects, like bridge replacements, paving jobs, things like that, where we might be able to add an enhanced crosswalk, for example, or a separated bike path on a bridge, so that everything sort of works together, and we stand a lot to lose if SB1 gets repealed.
Rex, thanks for buying me some time here at download. So just barely over $1 billion in 10 years.
It's all
In
over
Mendocino
Mendocino.
County.
Mendocino County.
Yeah, that's targeted for, and those projects aren't all initiated. There's 4 years of the overlap that are already programmed, but there's outlying 6 years that are kind of placeholder projects that are in the works, so.
Wow. Thank you.
And then Nevelia, I think you were gathering the numbers for the amount of money that's going to the cities in the county.
Yeah, the cities in the county, they have a certain pot of money that goes directly to them for use on local streets and roads. And the 10-year estimate, and I, if you want the breakdown, I can probably provide the breakdown, but it's $67,345,000 is the 10-year estimate that'll go directly to cities in the county. So that's a lot of pavement.
Dan?
Yeah.
Lisa Davy Bates, MCOG Planning Staff, for those of you who don't know me. And beyond that, we will also be getting additional, well, it would provide, or it does provide, unless it's repealed, additional funding to the state transit account, which provides additional funding to our transit agencies. It provides a lot of additional money to the active transportation program, which, you know, you've been hearing about today. You know, the planning grants that we've been applying for and been successful for a lot of the things you've seen today were through planning grants. SB1 also provides money for that. So it's widespread, you know, the impact that will happen. So just wanted to add that.
Right, so since Lisa mentioned transit, I'll just go ahead and add that one of the funding sources provided for transit is State of Good Repair, and annually MTA is getting about $130,000 from that funding source. And then the STA is the other funding source that the SB1 revenues come through. And that one has had really the most significant increase. So that's a funding source that had been continually declining every year prior to passage of SB1. And in the first year, which, you know, again, the revenues are building because they didn't all begin immediately. But the first year, the actual money received was an 89% increase compared to the actual revenue from the prior year. And then the estimate, so that was in 17-18, the actuals for 17-18. The estimates for the 18-19 are 150% greater than those received in 16-17. So it went from 16-17 revenue of $325,000 to an estimate for 18-19 of $812,000. So it's a really significant increase for transit as well as our streets and roads.
And that's state transit assistance, that comes under the Transportation Development Act, the TDA funds we were talking about before, which is, so it's a combination of the local transportation funds and the state funds that MCOG oversees and allocates that money. So that's something our transit agency and our contracted centers all count on that money. It makes a big difference.
I don't want you to forget about the cities who have passed sales taxes.
Right.
Also get a flat $100,000 a year out of these funds.
Yes, so Fort Bragg, Willits, and Point Arena all get an additional $100,000 annually. So every agency that has a sales tax specific to transportation is eligible for this funding, and there is a base amount, and all of because our cities are all pretty small, they all get that base amount of $100,000.
And thank you, Phil, for making sure that base was 100,000 and not 10,000.
Right. Yes, Phil was instrumental in many ways in making that happen. From the initial legislation that allowed the cities to pass their own sales
It really
tax.
has a major impact in Point Arena. They look at $100,000, but you know, I mean, 100,000 is 100,000.
And in addition to that formula money, they have the ability to apply for a competitive pot.
Yeah.
just among those local.
Right, that the LPP money that $100,000 comes from, it's actually a fairly small part that is by formula, and then is it 25 and 75, or did it end up 50-50? Anyway, 50-50, okay, so half of that money is actually distributed on a competitive basis, so those self-help agencies are eligible to compete for those competitive funds also. So it's really, there's a lot of funding coming from the gas tax, and it's distributed in a lot of different ways.
So that's the Senate, we keep saying SB1, we all kind of know the lingo. It's the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, so just so everybody knows.
And when was the last time we had a gas tax increase?
1994.
Yeah. And just to review.
Bill Clinton was young.
I think so was I. Can't remember though. Just for the people who don't pay attention to how these things work, we have to remember that we pay these gas taxes based on a commodity. So it's based on a gallon. So it's based on how much you consume, is how much is collected. And going back 30 years ago, everything was okay. But guess what? 30 years ago, we were all driving around with vehicles that got 14, 15, 16, 8 miles a gallon. And great, we have vehicles that get 30 miles a gallon now. But that means we consume less product, which means we contribute less when we have more highways, and meanwhile, construction costs, maintenance costs go up. Our revenues go down, and that's the point where we're at right now. And it's been that way for a long time. And we finally get it increased. We finally retire our debt for the Willits bypass. We're ready to take on some other things and forget about the bypass. We're done. And then there's no money. So, because of the amount that goes into the STIP, now we're ready to do other things. And we need more money in the STIP, plus all these other programs we talked about. They go directly to the county and the cities that they can use on their priorities. So that's the issue. It looked like everything was on the upturn, and people are afraid that we're wasting their tax money. And that's what it comes down to.
Another interesting part of that is vehicles are becoming more efficient, and also we're going to more electric vehicles, so you don't get as much revenue there. But also vehicle miles traveled is still going up and up and up all the time. People have more cars in a family, they're driving more, and so there is that move afoot to change our system from a fuel consumption model to one that's based on the number of miles people drive.
And those electric vehicles still take up space on the freeways. And they still produce wear and tear on the roads.
And they'll be paying, what is it, $100 a year
Right.
under this bill, but not until I think 2020. So
Right, so that'll.
we're getting off free for a couple of
Yes.
years there.
Yeah, incentives.
I was ready to pay mine, but they won't take it. So I think it's just they're still on trying to have an incentive to get people to buy more electric vehicles. So.
Okay, well, thanks for the update on SB1, and I actually the figures are really kind of big.
Yeah,
They're
they
coming in
really
Mendocino
are.
County.
Just more math coming in. I want to say, because it's of the 1 billion, just over 1 billion, 400 to 500 million, talking big numbers, that's the ones that are prioritized for SB1 projects here. So now what that means is that's getting those done within 10 years. And then the phrase comes in, delay, deferred, or decrease. And
We were expecting $1 billion a year. What do you think? Not 10 years.
Wow.
No, just.
You need to put in job applications. We need some help. That's what everybody here does. Anyway, I just want to get that, make sure you have that figure out there.
So we could lose about half of
Yeah,
what's
here
planned.
it's about half, but just
Yeah.
the nature of the projects that fit those 4 categories that I was mentioning earlier.
I guess I guess with SB1, we'll have to stop complaining that rural America doesn't get its fair share. Okay,
Do you
thank
have
you.
any other questions?
So then, do we have any other board member items?
Doesn't matter, Graham.
CalCog, do we have a CalCog meeting coming?
I mean, Thursday in Sacramento for CalCog.
That's the directors.
Correct. Or the board.
Yeah, board delegates.
Delegates.
Okay. And then there's the regional leadership forum would be in March, I think. Coming up. Yeah, in Yosemite.
Okay, with that, I think 8 minutes after 2, we'll adjourn the meeting.